Hello, I'm Captain Jack and welcome to the Hangar Bay. On this channel, we take a deep dive into the best starships, technology, and more from your favourite sci-fi universes. Today, we're talking about Star Trek's cheap science starship, the Nova-class. With larger ships designed for long-term missions, such as the Galaxy-class, Excelsior-class, Intrepid-class, and many more, Starfleet clearly needed a vessel for short-term planetary research missions. As such, the Nova-class was introduced. Given its introduction in the 24th century, the ship is relatively smaller than other classes operational during this time. Remember, for the latest videos, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Please consider supporting the Hangar Bay's video production by hitting the join button below. It's similar to Patreon. Any support is greatly appreciated. Let us know in the comments whether you would command a Nova class in Star Trek, or would you prefer something bigger? Bonus points if you can tell us the name of your starship. Let's go. The Nova class was a 24th century vessel that began life around the 2370s. It is classed as a scout ship and science vessel for specific scientific missions, planetary surveys, and important research missions. It was initially designed as a successor to the Galaxy class, with 4 versions of the design suggested. However, the Nova class eventually became more tuned to a smaller science vessel, a replacement for the aging Oberth class. Given its operations as a science vessel, the Nova class was not typically suitable for combat operations. The class design had a maximum warp speed of 8. The Nova class came in at a length of 221.74 meters. Unlike some of the other starship vessels in service at Starfleet, the Nova class only featured one impulse drive. This was located at the aft end of Deck 2 and aligned to the center of the ship. Speaking of the ship's decks, the Nova class had 8 decks, with a bridge located on Deck 1 and engineering located on Deck 7. From Deck 4, the crew could access the Wave Rider, a small atmospheric vessel that could reach Mach 12 inside a planet. Located on Decks 2 and 3 was the large cargo bay. The Nova had 2 shuttle bays, one at the end of the ship's secondary hull and one sitting higher on the mid-secondary hull. We'll go over a small craft in a second. The Nova class was fitted with a navigational deflector. Like other Starfleet designs, the deflector was there to prevent space debris and objects from colliding and damaging the vessel. Like other vessels, this was installed on the bow of the secondary hull. The vessel was primarily designed as a short-function vessel, with most of the standard facilities of larger starships not available in this class. For example, there is no holodeck on the starship, though the sickbay did come equipped with holo emitters for the emergency medical hologram system, with the Nova-class starships being one of the first vessels to have this system installed. The vessel was not expected to serve for extended periods, however, it was given the most up-to-date equipment of any ship of the time. While not designed for combat operations, the Nova-class design had Type 10 phaser arrays, 2 forward torpedo launchers and 1 aft. Like the Intrepid-class, the Nova-class could land on the planet's surface, and, due to advances in gravity control and structural integrity fields, it was able to maneuver successfully in the atmosphere. Deflector shields were equipped for defense purposes. The vessel had a unique shield recharging feature, where if the ship dropped shields for 45 seconds, the emitters would recharge and power up to full once again, ready to defend the starship. Going back to the interior of the ship, the Nova class's size did not leave room for comfort. Although small, the space was sufficient to meet the crew's needs. The main bridge, which was located on Deck 1, was rather spacious. It allowed for ease of movement between stations. The captain's chair was on the starboard side, and the executive office was on the port side. Between them, there was a console built into the structure that provided a place for information dissemination, as well as other operational commands of the starship. Directly ahead of the command area, and down into a further sunken area was the con. Other locations aboard the Nova class included the sickbay and science labs. The sickbay was located on Deck 4 in front of the shuttle bay. Speaking of the hangar locations, Starfleet worker bees and Type 6 shuttlecraft were stored on board. This, of course, does depend on the mission parameters. One unique feature of the Nova class was the Wave Rider shuttle, which was located in a special docking port on the ventral side of a primary hull, very similar to that of the Aero shuttle on the Intrepid class. Deck 7 was the location of main engineering. The engine room itself only spanned 1 deck and would feature 4 wall-based engineering consoles along with a warp core analysis console in front of the core. The core itself spanned from decks 5 through 8. Like an Intrepid class, the warp core could be ejected from the bottom of a starship in the event of an emergency. The crew complement of a Nova class starship was typically around 78 personnel. The Nova class has appeared several times across Star Trek media. Most notably is the Star Trek Voyager 2-parter episode, Equinox, in 2375. This sees another Starfleet vessel, the USS Equinox, thrown into the Delta Quadrant. It suffered heavy losses in its first week in the Delta Quadrant, losing over half of its crew. From there, they survived as best they could until they arrived at the Arcani homeworld, where they were shown a spirit of good fortune. This turned out to be a nucleogenic life form. The crew discovered a way to utilize the life form to boost their warp drive, using the dead form of one of the creatures to power it for a limited time. However, the more creatures they murdered and exploited, the more their ship came under attack from the said creatures, until most of the crew were lost and the vessel was falling apart. Upon encountering the Intrepid-class USS Voyager, the crew of the Equinox tried to keep their experiments hidden, essentially as they violated quite a few rules. Still, this ultimately failed. The crew kidnapped 7 of 9, one of Voyager's crew member, and replaced the Doctor on Voyager to keep Captain Catherine Janeway from stopping them from getting home. Ultimately, as always, the crew of Voyager put a stop to the unethical works of the Equinox, and eventually the small science vessel was destroyed, with the remaining crew absorbed into Voyagers. A subclass of the Nova class appeared in the Star Trek Voyager episode Endgame in the year of 2404, with a vessel of the USS Rhode Island. This was captained by Captain Harry Kim. The USS Rhode Island was sent to pursue Admiral Janeway as she attempted to change history for Voyager's sake. Given that this appears in an alternate future, we don't know if this refit class does exist in the prime timeline. Harry Kim later came to Janeway's rescue, and the Rhode Island took on 2 Negvar-class Klingon warships. The Nova class also made its way onto the animated screen of Star Trek, appearing in lower decks as a small cruiser escorting Starfleet security to the damaged USS Cerritos, where they then arrested Captain Freeman on the charges of destruction of a Pac-led homeworld. The small ship then transported her back to Earth. The Nova class made 2 appearances in Star Trek Picard, first appearing in an alternate timeline as Confederacy vessels, aptly named the CSS Darity and CSS Quinn. Both of these vessels were destroyed during their engagement with the La Serena and the recently liberated Confederate Borg Queen. The class also appeared in the season final of Star Trek Picard Season 3, as at least 20 Nova-class vessels took part in the Frontier Day celebrations and were used by the Borg to attack Starbase 1, launching an all-out attack on the Starbase, crippling it before moving on to launch an attack on Earth's major populations, just narrowly being stopped by Picard and the crew of the Enterprise D. So far, we know the following ships of the Nova class: the USS Rebus, USS Equinox, and USS Mandel. We can presume the USS Nova may have been the class prototype. Star Trek designer Rick Sternbach was asked to develop a small science-based ship for the 2-part final, Equinox. The vessel had to have been built around the same era as Voyager, which meant he had to start a new starship from scratch until he remembered his previous designs in the Deep Space Nine technical manual, which was a prototype version of the USS Defiant from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Much like the in-universe lore, Sternbach reworked the Pathfinder class slightly and sent off for approval, eventually reworking the Borgbuster with its 4 forward torpedo tubes into a basic, run-of-the-mill, short-range science vessel. When building the original Pathfinder class, Rick hadn't given much thought to the underside, so when it came to updating it into the Nova class, he considered what sort of aesthetics the vessel would have with its current designs. He then added the arrow-shaped Wave Rider, rounded the underside of the hull, and blended the 2D topside design into the 3D standard Federation Starfleet vessel we all recognise. The next job was to damage the vessel, and according to Rick, Lightwave, which is a 3D software, had a unique feature to be able to realistically distort and damage the vessel. This effect gave it a real feeling of having been thrown through the wars, hence the USS Equinox design. He also solidified the backstory of the Defiant and Nova as separate entities, knowing that some fans may see the cross design and begin to speculate on their own. And the final piece of trivia, the USS Rhode Island was a tweaked CG model of a Nova, which Rob Bonchoon subtly changed. This was to show the updated refit version of the ship in the 25th century. So that's an overview of Starfleet's cheap science ship. It seems like a worthy replacement for the Oberth class, which suffice to say was interesting in its own right. Do you like the ship, and would you command one in the Star Trek universe? Comment your thoughts below. To see more Star Trek Starship breakdowns, check out the playlist on the end screen. If you've enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to the Hangar Bay here on YouTube. You can also support the future development of our YouTube videos by becoming a YouTube member. Any support is greatly appreciated. That's the end of this video. I've been Captain Jack in the Hangar Bay. Remember, if you're talking about science fiction, we want to hear about it.